All right, all yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm super excited. And I figured today what I'm going to do is I'll go through, you know, 30 cash leaks, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Let me do a quick screen share. Do I have access? I do. Cool. And this is me, a corporate dropout with 20 years of operations experience. Since my time on Wall Street, two-time, running around like a crazy person, doing massive sports and entertainment events. I decided that I really wanted to help agencies because they were on the vanguard and first adopters of what organizations look like today, right? So I've been on Zoom for the last 7 years. And when the pandemic started, everyone was like, oh my God, how do we go remote? Been there, and we've now helped agencies in 5 different continents, which is pretty cool, I think, giving us, really great ideas on what not only remote culture looks like, but, outsourcing, resourcing, white labeling, co-labeling, all the things. All right, so today, what we really want to chat about, given the economic climate, given everything that's going on, and just running a really good foundational business, is around cash leaks. And what my goal for everyone today is to be able to find your top 3 priorities in cash leaks so that you can take action on it and go forth and conquer this year. So we're going to go through a 4-step process to do that. And if you haven't gotten your worksheet, it kind of looks like this. Make a copy so we can go through it, and we can actually identify everything within this hour. I like working with velocity. I know it sounds like a big game, but I believe that we can play a big game here. All right. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was, what type of owner are you? And what I mean by this is, in my time through all of the agencies that I have known, I've seen kind of 3 big categories of owner types. We've got the innovators who they're like, just let me at it. I love R&D. Give me all the tools. AI is new. I want to play with it. New campaigns, new services, like really excited to just kind of get in it, into the nitty gritty of like building the next new products and services of the business. There's the rainmaker. And usually this person is like, just get me in front of them. We're going to sell them. It's the visionary. It's the person that, is like, it's like, all right, we got a deal. Let's go at it. And then is who I call the exit master, right? What's the next acquisition, the next business, the productization of the business so that they can go on to the next thing. And in your worksheet, what I would love is for you guys to self-identify which one you are. And if you want to stick it in the chat, also go for it, because I'm just always curious. Innovator. All right, cool. Anybody else? Rainmaker. I like it. I like it. And obviously, you can be a combination of these. You do not have to put yourself into a very specific check mark. All right, we got some rainmakers. Okay, we got a blend. Colleen, very cool. Okay. Now, the next thing I want you to do in the worksheet is check off what are the areas that you're mostly working on. Right? So is it sales? Is it client management? Is it marketing? Is it operations? Finance? Like, what's really occupying your time? Be something else. And then right over here, what are your top 3 things that are taking up your bandwidth? Case Phillips, yes, you can be all. You special queen. King. Okay. I like it. Okay. All right. So, really wanting to kind of identify where you're spending your time. Now, innovators, what I have seen, usually new campaigns, new product lines, new service lines, new technology, right? Streamlining, rainmakers, closing clients, strategic deals, partnerships, speaking engagements, trade shows, like, exit masters, selling a business, buying a business. And the piece that I want to get to today, which is the next part of the worksheet, is what is your effective hourly rate for the business, right? I'm not talking about your billable or what you tell your clients or what, is written down on a scope sheet. It's each of these individuals, right? Or your blend generates revenue for the business, right? Whether it's like, okay, this new campaign is going to generate us X amount, this new deal is going to generate us X amount. And so what I want you to think through is where your special genius is at, like what you're really good at. Take that and figure out, okay, how much is that generating on average? And we can guesstimate a little bit here, right? Because I know we may not, have come with all of our P&Ls and scope creators. How much hours does it take on average? And then we can start to take on our hourly rate. So you can put it here, here, and then hopefully it is properly formatted. We'll get an hourly rate, right? We'll get an approximation. After this, you guys can go and have fun, hopefully with some margaritas, and do this properly. But I want us to just get an estimation. Did anyone come up with an estimation so far? Or well, just doing math right now. All right, cool. No. All right, so I want to talk about Guillermo's effective hourly rate. It's 25,000 per hour. And this is something not too uncommon. Usually when I do this calculation for most owners, it's somewhere in the thousands, right? And the thing that is really leaking from an owner's perspective is the opportunity cost to be able to do other things, right? So real case study. So I'm like, Guillermo, talk to me. He's like, yeah, I'm stuck in the weeds. I'm still like, and 7-figure business, right? Owner. He's like, I'm still answering client, via text message. Okay. Ask him, give me an average, an exchange. It's about 15 minutes on average. I'm like, okay. We calculated his effectively hourly. You can see it there, which means that every single text message was basically costing him $625. Right. And so I'm like, dude, you got to get off text message. Right now. And I'm not talking about these premium clients. I'm talking about like anyone and everything that just needed him because they thought he was the smartest person in the room. And so this is really important for us to take a look at, because you can't really focus on that 1,000, 25,000. For some of you, it might even be 5,000 hourly task if you don't know what they are. And the first profitability leak is visibility. And it's visibility across the board, right? Like this is just a sample of, what you as an individual, as an owner, or even your leadership might be doing. Now I'm going to get into like the nitty gritty of everything else. But I wanted to really hone this in because oftentimes we talk about like, well, should we delegate something or should we not? Should we fix this process or this bottleneck? Am I being the bottleneck? And the opportunity cost of you spending time on your business where it's not best and it's not going to be the most effective and the value is where we begin. All right, cool. So I like to take polls on LinkedIn just because I'm a data nerd, right? So, oftentimes I'll ask like, okay, where does low client profitability piss you off? People are like, 67% is like, you're fighting another fire. Now, because I am a data nerd, I'd like to say that all of these are statistically significant. We had a big enough sample size. Where do people feel the most pain? Sucky employees, and what fixes profitability? Now, we had 67% people say systems and process efficiency. I don't know if I believe that because, my following is pretty cooked. They've heard me talk about this all the time. I obviously believe this because it's fundamental to who I am and what I do. But I want us to talk through like what are actual solutions for this. All right, so now we're going to go through 29 profit leaks. You guys ready? Okay, so left-hand side, we have a schematic of a P&L statement. And, one of the things that I would recommend as I was doing a couple of roundtables at the Obama Summit, it's like actually taking a look at the P&L statement pretty consistently, right? That's one. Two, making sure that it's being reconciled in time so that your lag to decision making isn't that large, right? So you're able to take a look at it, hopefully, within a week or two of the month being, closed so that you have good data, clean data, and data in which you can make decisions upon. So I'm going to leave the P&L there because I am sure that you guys have talked about that a ton. And if not, we can talk about that in the Q&A. The other place that I want you to take a look at is across your customer journey. When we're thinking through marketing, sales, onboarding, engagement, delivery, retention, where are the actual profit leaks? Right? And so they start to trickle in every single point, right? And across these is your team performance, right? We have your team, you have your retention, your management, your culture, whether or not people are waking up and feeling like working, right? Who is underperforming and setting the standards for everyone in your organization across the board. So I'd love for you to go into your worksheet. All right. And now at this piece, I broke these down and you could just check these off, right? So step one, we're just going to identify where you think, make your best guesstimate, in the business where there are leaks. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do that. Anyone have any questions as you're going through it?
Feel free to unmute and ask a question if you have it, or put it in the chat and we can deal with it that way. hearing no questions.
All right, pretty self-explanatory then. Or we'll get them at the end. Okay, so then what I want you to do, you might have a few in each category, or you may not have any, right? Step 2 is to pick the top one for each category. And, you know, the way that I tend to word this, if I need to choose or prioritize, is like, where am I bleeding money? And I know that's a visceral thing, but that usually makes it very concrete for me. Either like, where am I bleeding money? You know, where am I getting pulled in where I shouldn't be? Where are there the most fires? Do you have any other
my
ways?
money's going to be on Scoop, having seen most of these people's financials.
Your money's on which one?
Scope creep.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's go back to Guillermo as you guys are thinking through that. And for him, he really went from a profit loss to a profit share, right? He had 14 team members, about 1.7 million of revenue. Client profitability was negative 374 at one point. It was pretty dire. They had cancellations, they were losing clients, they had people who were underperforming. And so we took a look at his processes, you know, as well as his P&L. We're like, okay, what do we need to put in place? Right. So I was like, okay, client onboarding, client management, project management. And we also needed to put in place hiring and onboarding to replace some of the staff that was basically holding some of his processes hostage. Right. It was like, I can't really fire that person because we can't plug someone in. And so, okay, let's put in a good process in place so that you can plug somebody in, right? And that way we were able to ramp up people, get them billable, get them utilized really quickly, right? So that was when we were thinking through process, right? So I often think about this as almost like a pyramid: process, performance, and profitability, right? Then for performance, one of the things that we did with our client profitability sheet was we took a look at which clients were not profitable. And we actually had to fire a few. And that's oftentimes really hard because you're like hanging on to that revenue. You're like, but if the profitability is really low and you have underperforming employees, you actually net really positive if you can do the math of the agency, right? So we fired some clients, we fired some underperformers, and we put in some KPIs so we had that visibility in place.
All of you know that if you have not done this, all of you know that you have a client on your roster that you are literally paying for the privilege of doing work for them. You know that. And you look at the top line cash flow and you disregard what it costs you to service the business. And it's not even a low profitability number. You are servicing clients that are costing you money. There is no profit.
I've had, and this is what I call, and again, I like to have words that are visceral so that it brings things top of mind. You're donating hours. Your team is donating hours. I know, Camille. Right. So, and it becomes a line item where it's like, okay, we're just going to throw this into the donation box, right? And again, the opportunity cost for the team, especially for those high performers that can go and like rock it out, right? like those clients that are unprofitable are usually miserable too. Like you can feel it, before I give, people, I'm like, okay, here we're going to do this client profitability sheet. I'm like, is there any client that when the ring dinger ping from the inbox or the text or whatever comes, like your team just kind of wants to like throw an eraser at them, or like other things at the computer? Usually, yes. When we do the math, it's like, oh yeah, of course, this is why. Like it's a profitability drain, but it's also an emotional drain for those performers on your team that are trying to do a really good job. And so when we did this, right, with Guillermo, he was able to institute profit share, which he had been wanting to forever. And he increased his retention to 92%. I actually think that's an old stat. I think right now it's at 97%. Because like they've gone through this process a few times where, like this was cleanup. And then it was rescoping. And then it was, what does it look like when we increase our hourly billable across the board? Then who becomes unprofitable, right? So you start to pull the levers of the math, and the business starts to run very differently. So what I would like everyone to do is to go back to your worksheet. I know, right? Like back to homework. And so I want you to, all right, so you got about 6 different, categorical priorities. I want you to pick 3. Sean White, the termination letter. Yeah. We have a Gong channel in our Slack. And I think whenever anyone fires a client, there's like no more greater emotion than that. People are always like, yes. All right. We've picked 3. Okay. So just to kind of give you an inside look into like, how did we do this with Guillermo? Right. So I do this thing called a skill map. It's like literally my favorite thing. And so it's a diagnostic and a roadmap, right? And we break down your processes by function. We also have in here marketing for anyone who's doing marketing, but this is like, I really try to focus on what are the sales, like the processes for delivery. And we look at it by workflows, by tech, by main documents, training materials, and metrics, right? These are our pillars. And then we cross-section it with our business functions. And so what you could see is that for his team, there wasn't a lot of training. He was missing key documents in his production, which is why his deliverability was like slow and people were reinventing the wheel. And the workflows were a hot mess, right? This was what he did beforehand. And we score, right? We're like, all right, 58%. First time anyone does something tends to be overestimated, right? People are like, yeah, we got our stuff, we got our tag, we got our this. We got some stuff. So then once we were working together, we put everything in place, he was at 84%. Other thing is, once people do this the second time, they underestimate. So it's probably a little bit better than that. And so we were able to like see exactly where in his processes there was things missing so that we could go in and troubleshoot them, right? And so combine that with the P&L, and we were able to really say, okay, here's where you're bleeding money. Here's why. Now, here's the prioritization to go ahead and fix it. Now, for you, everybody, what I want you to do is guesstimate how much profitability, if you fix these 3 things, you think you will be able to reclaim? And again, I don't expect you to have your P&L in front of you, but you might have some clue. And if you go ahead and you do this with actual numbers, right, you'll be able to compare and contrast. And I'd love to hear it. You know, you guys can email me and stuff like that, because I always geek out on this stuff. But I'd love for you to be able to kind of guesstimate where you think you'll be able to reclaim profitability for this year. And then I'd love to just leave it up to questions. I like interactive workshops. So you can unmute or put it in the chat.
Hi, I'm Colleen Gallagher with Onward and Upward. There's a lot in the chat, and I was commenting too about the firing clients, and I get it. I'd be really curious for advice on like actually making the jump as a new agency owner. And there's 2, and one of this is a fear because it's a high revenue, but obviously I understand like logically that we're putting in more time in that. And the other is misguided loyalty, because it was the first, non-referral client. Someone actually found us through our marketing and has worked with us over and over. And and again, in my head, I know we're doing more than we should for them, but I have trouble making that jump to actually put that loyalty aside and make the right business decision. So I'd be curious how people make that switch in their head to move forward with that.
And I think it's really common that some of our most unprofitable clients are legacy, right? And we see that so much because they started with you, they grew with you, they might have been there before you put in any sort of process and or rescoped your stuff or raised your prices. You might have not raised their prices, you might have left them like that, right? They're used to a little bit more or a lot of bit more white glove than other people. So there's a lot of attachment there. And I often say, are you willing to lose the client? Right? Like, are you willing to lose them? And that's a hard one, right? Because it's almost sometimes more emotional than it is like factual. Right? So that's the one, right? And not thinking just about your relationship, but what does it mean for your team if you were to lose them? What does it mean for your P&L? And then can you re-onboard the client? Right. And an easy way to re-onboard some clients, this is like a re-onboarding hack that I often talk about. So you tell the client that you're raising your prices. Chances are, if they're a legacy client, you have already raised your prices and you just left them where they're at, right? And then you can say, okay, we're willing to maybe not raise the prices all the way up, right? We might, go here so that there's a level of, camaraderie in the conversation, right? Like it's a win-win. And now I need you to do X, Y, and Z, right? So it's like, okay, you're going to get them on board to your new processes, to the new way of doing things, where everything is, really clear, where you rescoped the engagement, right? And sometimes with certain legacy clients, like you can take a look at what the engagement, whether it's project-based, retainer-based, whatnot, you're like, wow, this stuff is not getting the results. Or like, we're doing some stuff and it's just because it's how we've been doing it forever. It's the thing that they want. That doesn't matter, right? So whatever that is, I think step 1 is saying, okay, can we re-onboard them? Can we get them on the program? And then, right, like if they're like, oh no, that's too high, or oh, I can't do that, right? Like now you have a very different conversation.
I also think you have to ask yourself, what is it costing you, not in dollars? So
Mm-hmm.
is it putting a lot of strain on your team? Is it stress? Is it making your employees feel disrespected? Is it an opportunity cost, as Juliana said earlier, which is if my team wasn't spending so much time chasing after the tail of this client, they would have time and energy to do this work. So I think it's not just a dollar cost. And in fact, I think some of the more expensive costs aren't about the dollars and cents, especially in today's hiring environment. It's really about your team. It is, a lot of times the client that's not profitable isn't in your sweet spot. They're too big and you can't really service them. They're more sophisticated than you can handle, or they're too small and they're piddly, but they take a lot of time, or they're not in your niche. There's a lot of reasons why a client is a bad fit and not profitable. So I think you have to do the soul searching deeper than just the dollars, and then decide if you want to do the re-onboarding, which I love. If you check the boxes and go, you know what, we just mishandled this. We underpriced it. Our contract is wrong, whatever. They're a great referral source, so I'm willing to only make 10%. At AMI, all of you know, we believe that if a client is less than 10% profitable, you have no business continuing to serve them. But I think the question is broader than just the dollars before you fix them. So, all right. So now, Juliana, go back to, if they decide they do want to keep them, what are some ways to make them a profitable client, or at least try?
Yes. So one of the things to look at is, how do we rescope them, right? So is there anything that isn't really adding value, adding results, from a production standpoint? The other thing to look at is, from a service standpoint, like, are you over servicing this client, right? Like, do you have a top account manager on a tiny client? Do you have, a small client that is getting a weekly call, where your top clients are getting weekly calls and they really only need a quarterly call, right? So thinking through, not only just like what you're doing in terms of production for them, but also how you're servicing them, in terms of rescoping that, I think that's really important. And the other piece that I would say is, you guys have such a great community here. If a client's not a good fit, as Drew had mentioned, minus if the client's just a total asshole, right? That happens. Like, I had a client recently. Yeah. Like the client was like, you work for me, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, not anymore. And he was doing that to his employee, like one of his top employees. He's like, nope, you're not doing this. So, minus that situation, you can create a place where you hand off the client to someone that you trust, right? That is going to be able to service them correctly, whether, it's downstream or upstream. And you can, either you have a relationship where you can refer clients to each other, or you can collect a service fee. And sometimes that service fee is more profitable than servicing the client.
All right. Other questions? Okay. You guys are never this quiet.
Angela from Vision Creative Group. I was just wondering, for those of you who have sent termination letters and kind of fired clients, if you've had blowback come back on you or your company from perhaps a client that was extremely unhappy with the fact that you discontinued their service.
What would that blowback look like, do you think? What are you afraid of?
And I'm just thinking, like, I know we have several tiny clients that are, like I said, the ones that cause the most headaches are usually the ones that aren't profitable, who are very, in my opinion, they're not the best business people, just how they handle themselves. And there have been conversations and just attitude towards people working for our company that is incredibly unprofessional. And I just, And I don't think they have tremendous reach, but I could totally see them kind of going scorched earth, blasting, whether it's LinkedIn,
Bad
social
reviews.
media, that kind of thing.
Juliana, thoughts? Or anybody else?
So I think the question is like reputation risk and reputation management, right? Like how do we manage reputation from someone who is going to badmouth you all over the interwebs? And the way that I have seen it treated really well is, now if it's one individual, right? Like this is how, if it's more than one individual, then that's a different conversation. We could talk about that as well. But if it's one individual, it's facts and empathy is kind of how you treat any bad reviewer. It's like, hey, I'm sorry this happened. I feel you. Here are the facts. Because people often, when they're looking at these reviews online, they'll believe it if they see a pattern, but what they care most about is how the company responds, because it's your brand, right? So you take it seriously for what it is, and you just make sure that you have a plan to manage the reputation risk that really represents who you are.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
My feeling is, after 30 years of doing this and firing many, many clients, because you're right, the emotive energy is just not worth it. And it's so much lost opportunity that at some point you have to figure out, and you're right, Juliana, it's, if they see a pattern of your company doing this, then they start kind of wondering. But if they see a one-off and you've responded with facts and information, that's all the reviewer needs to see to not have it be, an issue. And believe me, if they're having an issue with you, they're probably having an issue with a lot of other people around town. We have a large client, a pretty large client, who is horrible to our staff, just horrible. And the toll that takes on the people in the office, they're unprofitable to start with that. And they're, horrible to the people in the office. That really makes a huge downer amongst all the people that have to now work with this client. And at some point, it's a self-defeating proposition to keep working with them.
Absolutely.
You
And I'll just speak a little bit to the reputation risk at scale, right? So we had Rand Fishkin come and speak around Glassdoor reviews, right? Same, different, because there was a moment of like, we're scaling really quickly, and they didn't really have HR, and so people left, and then they were just like bashing them on Glassdoor for some of our clients. Same thing can happen, if like, something happens with your clients. Obviously, I'd say, take responsibility, take a look at what you can fix, and blah, blah, blah. But like, let's say you've done all that. Now you have an SEO issue, right? So some ways to combat this is to, kind of bury, for lack of a better term, the reviews with other backlinks and with, an SEO strategy. So, if you have something at scale, then you're not dealing with like individual reputation risk. Now you're dealing with overall. And one of the strategies is to create, SEO around whatever terminology it is that people, whether it's Glassdoor or client reviews or whatnot. So that's a different strategy. But if you were ever worried about that at scale.
I also think that in many cases, when somebody goes out either in writing or at a networking meeting or whatever, and sort of, shares their deep emotions around those kind of topics, people consider the source and they consider the vitriol level. And, you guys are all good business people. And so you're not just going to fire a client in a bad way. And again, this may not be about firing a client, but if you do decide to part ways with a client, you're going to handle it professionally. You're going to offboard them to someone else. And you just tell the truth. And, the good news is today's internet sensation or LinkedIn post or whatever is tomorrow's old news. And so I think I understand the concern, but I do believe that even if it's a super popular client or somebody that is well known and well respected, they're going to consider all of the circumstances. And honestly, nobody cares that much about us. They're going to care for a minute and then move on. And if you have to deal with it with your clients, you can explain the situation that, this is the profile of the client. Here's why we love working with you. Not every client's a great fit for us. So you know what? One of our policies is if we can't make a client happy, it's our responsibility to try and suggest to them someone who can make them happy. Because I do believe, I'm sure there are some people who are bad clients for all people, but a lot of times the client that is bad for us isn't a bad client. They're just a bad client for us. And so you can offboard them in a way that is kind, respectful, and kind of tamps down the concern. But you cannot be held hostage by a client any more than you could be held hostage by an employee. That's a really lousy way to run your business. And many of you have heard me give that speech to you individually before.
Absolutely. On the termination of a client, I would like to just point one thing where it can get real sticky. So just, because I know people were like asking for the template and everything like that. Is you're terminating the client, and now the client wants all this additional consulting to train the next agency. And whether that's they're doing or you're doing, right? And so that's a place where we don't often think about it as scope creep, but you're like, here's your passwords, here's your stuff, goodbye. And they're like, no, but can you do this? And can you have meetings? And like now you're getting roped into 100 meetings that you weren't expecting to do a transition, right? Mm-hmm. One of the ways that I've often, suggested or made recommendations with that is put in a consulting fee. It's like, if you want transition, this is the consulting hourly, this is who you're going to get to do it, right? And this is embedded in that sort of termination. Again, whether it's them, an exit fee, yes, very cool. Whether you're asking them to exit or they're asking you to exit, just having that piece is super important.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Like,
and by the way, the answer to all of these cash leaks, we've been focusing on bad clients, but honestly, a lot of it is our own stuff. It's our own process or lack thereof. It is our own, set of standards or KPIs. So don't get too caught up in that part of this conversation, because there's plenty of other cash leaks in other spots of your business. Other questions? If you don't have some, I have some for you. So what are you going to do different? Kathy, I ask a question. Kathy's like, gotta go. In chat.
Like, I'm out. Just like,
just want you to know I noticed.
The timing of that was perfect.
Bye.
I literally saw like the running man in my head, or the running woman for Kathy.
Thank you.
What are you going to do different? What did you learn? What's the takeaway for you in this?
So we've got guardrails.
I love your point about thinking beyond just the dollars and the emotional toll it's taking on my team. I mean, that hit home when you said that. So
absolutely. And I know we're focused on the client side, right? But I want you to think in your head, and this is also hard, right? Like, this is emotional. Like, who on your team is underperforming?
We've been doing monthly profitability kind of reports based on who's performing on our team for quite a while. And it's been interesting to see who kind of consistently is falling at the bottom. And, you know, is it because of the work they're working on, or is it something else? So I think that it doesn't go unnoticed, but I don't know that anything actionable has been done. So I think that's something that definitely have to look more seriously at, and to see how, whether it's cross training to make them more usable in another area, or if they're not the right person. So it's, and I agree, the emotional toll, not just the dollars and looking beyond that, I think is going to be huge when it comes to kind of taking another look at not just the numbers, but also what it's doing to morale and the people we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it comes to that, right? And depending on where you are on the maturity of your business, first it's like, do you have the visibility to see who's performing or not? Right? Like, you know, do we have any sort of dashboards for operations or for sales, depending on like what type of team member it is? You know, if you have account managers, are they surviving clients? Are they growing clients? If you have junior people, are they like fully thoroughly being utilized? If you have managers, are the managers actually managing? And I know that's a weird question, but oftentimes people are like, I hired a manager to take stuff off my plate, but now I'm still doing the same stuff and blah, 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 right? Like, and they're not managing. So do we have systems for management in place? If someone's underperforming, and I love the concept of, you know, like having the right person in the right seat. And if you have the profitability to move them into that seat, that's amazing that you can do that, right? But oftentimes if you're a smaller business, you may not have that like luxury.
Right.
And so it's, you know, like there's calls to be made. And if you have people really messing up, right now, same way with like with clients, I'm like, you're donating hours. I have a HR friend that's like, okay, well now you have a charity line. I was like now you're just, you know, there goes your money. And that's hard. It's really hard, especially if you like the person.
But again, the cost is not just, it's just not financial, right? So here's what I'm going to tell you. When I say to you, there's someone on your team that has been underperforming for a long time, and the rest of your team is frustrated that you haven't dealt with it. Almost every one of you, someone popped into your head and you know who that is. And the question you have to ask yourself is, what price are you really paying as a leader, as a business owner, by keeping that person on? And what A player is going to be the first one out the door because they're tired of carrying that person's weight?
Yeah.
Okay, this feels like this is a very mean conversation so far. So
I know.
Juliana, give us 3 things we can do to make it better. Let's end on an up note of what can we do to make things better in the next 30 days?
Absolutely. So I want everyone to take those 3 priorities. And if you haven't picked them out yet, you know, absolutely do that within, you know, by the end of the week. So that gives you some really tangible things to work on in June. Like I said, I'll send you the slides, right? We can attach those priorities to the process, like where they really belong, right? And then start thinking through, okay, how do we create, standardize, or optimize this process to make it more effective for the team, for our clients, for everyone? So, and then, right, so 1, look at your priorities. 2, look at the process for the priorities. And then the third thing is absolutely start to revisit your P&L if you're not doing it, and think through, okay, where am I, you know, like what's not clicking here, right? Like where is this like becoming unprofitable, and taking a look at, you know, your cash expenses. So those are my 3 things. If you guys want, Drew and I are basically trying to see how the AMI and BABA community stacks up to our scale map participants. We've done the scale map with over 600 and people, and it's really phenomenal because we'll send you that heat map within 24 hours. So let me share screen. I'll do both a share screen and it's pretty neat. We've done an industry study now last year, and we're able to really see what's in your business. So you'll get a diagnostic like this. Oftentimes by people being able to look at this, it'll help you reclaim at least like 5 hours a week, because you can pinpoint exactly what's going on. So you can take, you know, if you want to do it on your phone, take the QR code, and let me put the actual web address in the chat as well.
So what we're going to do is we had everybody at the summit get this, and then we have all you guys getting it, and I'm going to email it out. We're going to put it in the newsletter, and we're going to compare AMI members and the community against the agency population as a whole to see if some of the things we're teaching are different, and honestly what gaps there are in our teaching. Where are you guys showing up with that you have challenges, so we can add more content around that and help you improve in those places. So it would really actually help us as well as you if you will take this assessment. So we would love to have your input on it, and then we'll get it back to all of you in a plethora of ways and report back. So that would be awesome. I mean, you'll get your own individual one, but we will come back to you with kind of a overview of what we saw amongst everybody. So we would love that. So we're at the top of the hour already. I can't believe how quickly that went, but thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for being at the summit last week. And thank you for leading the charge today. We're super grateful for your insight and how committed you are to helping agencies make more money and do better. So I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I know it was a little bit of a bleak conversation. It's never like we're dealing profitability. It's like, woo, super fun. It's not like when we talk about revenue, it's always, but the ability to invest, right? Have money, you know, create reserves, be able to manage the business, and run it really profitably instead of it running you, you know, just puts you in such a powerful position, no matter what is happening, on a macro or micro level. So like my hope for everyone today is that your profit gives you more power for this coming year.
That would be awesome. All right, you guys, this was great. Thank you for being with us. Again, I will send out the recording. I'll get the deck. I know several of you people have asked in the chat for the deck, so I will get that as well. We will include all of the links to all of the things, and I will get out the replay for you if you want to show this to your team, okay? Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it very much. Juliana, thank you again for being with us. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Have a good afternoon.